spoken too much about, but should be actually spoken about more and more, since it is very relevant to our times. And that is a topic that deals with the Geulah, the imminent redemption, B'ezrat Hashem, that hopefully all of us should see tonight. What I would like to do is I wrote down here some notes, or actually some points that I'm going to speak about, that I'll try to discuss each one of them. It's a very big subject, and I had to condense it, because it could really take a whole night just to discuss what has happened so far, what is expected to happen, what is the Geulah, what is Galut, what is the redemption, what is the diaspora. It's a very big subject. There's a lot of Gemarot, there's a lot of it written in the Zohar and the Midrashim. So I tried to condense it, and I divided it into 3 parts. Part number 1, I'm going to talk about the Emunah itself, the belief that we as Jews have in the Biat HaMashiach, what it means to believe in it, why it's important that we believe in it. Second part, I will try to describe the times that the rabbis tell us that we should be expecting the Mashiach. And number 3 are the prophecies, only some of the prophecies that are mentioned either in the prophets or in the Zohar, or what we should be expecting, some of which actually we are seeing and witnessing these days. So let me begin with the famous saying that all Jews say, Ani ma'amin ve'emunah shelema b'viat HaMashiach. We believe with utmost faith, clear faith, in the coming of the Mashiach. That is very fundamental to Judaism, that we believe in that. And we say that Af al pi she'itmatmea, even though he may take his time, he may be delayed, nevertheless, even so, I will still wait for him every single day of my life, for him to come. This has always been one of the yesodot, one of the foundations of Judaism, and it is important for a Jew to say this. It is important for him to aspire, to look forward to this. Why? Because it's important for him the day that Mashiach comes. Because what will happen? At that time, it is not a matter of us going back to Israel. That's just a small part of it. It is a time when finally the world will get a chance to see the heavenly court, that there is a God, that there is a creator to this world. The truth will come out. Justice will prevail. What is lacking today. So when we say that we believe in the coming of the Mashiach, why is it so important to us? Why are we looking forward to that day? Because we want all of that to happen. We want the truth to come out. We want justice to prevail. We want the Jewish people to go back to Israel. It's all of that together. And it's always been important to the Jewish people. It's a yesod, I wrote, a very important yesod in Judaism. And that is why the rabbis tell us that after Me'av Esrim, after a person departs from this world, when he goes upstairs, it is one of the questions that they will ask him. They will ask him several questions. Did you do business honestly? How did you conduct yourself? Did you study Torah? And they will also ask him, Tzipita Lishuah. Did you look forward? Did you care about this? Why is that so important to care about something like this? So first let's analyze the word Tzipita. When they ask you, did you look forward, they don't ask you, did you wait? Chikita. They ask you, Tzipita. What is Tzipiya? Tzipiya doesn't mean to wait. Everybody, I'm sure, in this room is waiting. No, the trick is, Tzipita is to look forward. The person that looks forward is always hopeful. He never gives up. He's always aspiring. He's always waiting for that moment. He's very excited about it. Wait is no big deal. Everybody waits and keeps it in the back of his mind. The real big deal is to actually think about it at every moment. There used to be rabbis who actually had a suitcase ready with some clothing and some things that they would prepare for themselves. Just in case Mashiach arrived, they would be ready to go quickly. That shows true emunah. It shows you're really looking forward. It's a meaningful part of your life. That is why they ask you that upstairs. They want to see how much of an emunah you have in this particular area. Why? Because a Jew that does believe, is in full faith, emunah shelema, in the Biat HaMashiach, his whole life is different. He conducts himself differently. He has hope. He doesn't get as easily depressed. He doesn't give up. It would make a tremendous difference in the Jew's life if he has this emunah. That's number 1. But number 2, it also says a lot about him. It says that he's very sensitive about the fact that the Shekhinah is in the Galut. The Shekhinah in the Galut means that we have no Bet HaMikdash. The temple was destroyed. It is not too obvious to anybody that there is a creator in the world. That pains the Jew. In other words, so when the Jew is really looking forward to the Mashiach, he's looking forward to the restoration of the glory, not only of the Jewish people, but of the Shekhinah, of Borei Olam. It should be obvious to the world that he is around. It's all of that, and when a Jew thinks about it, and he looks forward to it, he's sensitive about this. It means a lot to him. It pains him to see what's going on in the world. all the wars, all the lack of justice. And this is a very significant point in the Jew's life. That is why they ask him. The rabbis, when they talk about the subject, they tell us as follows. Shita alfi shni. The world is 6,000 years. That is how long this world as we know it will last. And they divide it up into 3 parts. The first 2,000 years they call it Tohu. Tohu means there's no order. There was no faith. Abraham Avinu was barely just convincing people when the first 2,000 years were just about to be complete. He was 52 years old, Abraham Avinu. He was born in 1948 from creation, the year 1948. And that is barely when the world is beginning, just barely beginning to believe that there's a creator. Remember, before that you had the flood era. You had all these generations that did not believe. So that is why they call those 2,000 years Tohu. There's no order, there's no belief. It's just the beginning. The following 2,000 years they call Torah. That is when the Torah was given in Sinai. The Jews came out of Egypt. You had later the Mishnah, you had the Gemara, you had all the rabbis. So we're up to the year 4,000. The last 2,000 years they call Yemot HaMashiach. The last 2,000 years of the 6,000 years, these are the days of Mashiach. Why are these the days of Mashiach? Because Mashiach can come at any time during the last 2,000 years. But it's not going to last more than 6,000. Now what we are interested in is not an entire 2,000 years. We're interested in something called the Ketz, and we're interested in a period called Aharit Hayamim. Because 2,000 years is a very long era. We're interested in a much more limited time that is called Aharit Hayamim, the end of days, or the moment or the day that is called the Ketz, the final end of all of this as we know it to be, the world as we know today. When will this come about? Well, as we will see tonight, there are many tarchishim, there are many events that we are aware of. What we don't know, however, is when they will occur. I'm going to talk about all sorts of events that will occur, all sorts of prophecies that have fulfilled themselves and that will fulfill themselves, that will give us an idea whether we're far away or whether we're close. But the actual day, the actual year, no human being knows. If anybody tells you he knows, he does not know. But there's one more trick. There are 2 possible dates. One is called Ita and one is called Ahishena. Ita is the last possible moment that it can come. And Ahishena means I will accelerate it, I will speed it up. He could have come a long time ago. And the Zohar says that in every generation, there are several propitious dates that he can come. According to the Kabbalists, 1948, the establishment of Medinat Israel, the new state in Israel, was a propitious time. 1967, some people say, when we liberated the Kotel HaMaravi, Yerushalayim, was a propitious date. Unfortunately, a lot happened. We saw great miracles, but that was only a part of it. We didn't see the whole thing taking place. So there are propitious times. And over the years, a lot of rabbis have said there is a great possibility, great probability that Mashiach will come then, at this particular day. Were they lying? Did they know what they were talking about? Yes, they knew what they were talking about, but it didn't come because for some reason we did not merit it. So there are several possibilities, several times that it can come. And then there's the final, the Ketz that's called the Ita, the last possible moment. Unfortunately, it is my opinion that we're holding closer to Ita than anything else. Just about, what is it now, 759 years into the year 6,000 have already passed. That means we're just very close to the year 6,000. So there could still be an Ahishena, there could still be an acceleration. Events can occur quickly. Nevertheless, unfortunately, we're closer to the case of Ita than we could have been 100, 200, 400 years ago. Just want to bring out a point before we go on, that it is not right, it is not a good idea, the rabbis tell us, lechashev et haketz. Lechashev et haketz means to try to calculate it, to try to read the prophecies, for example, of Daniel, and figuring out, oh, it must be that he meant this year. It must be that he meant right after this happens. The reason why the rabbis point that out, and they emphasize it very strongly, is because let's say you make a mistake. Let's say he doesn't come in that particular year. Then that could discourage a lot of people. Oh, he didn't come now, he's never coming again. So you have to be very careful not to raise your hopes too high. You have to look forward, you have to anticipate that he can come any day, but you can't point to a particular day because nobody knows the exact date. And even though the rabbis tell us in the Midrash that Yaakov wanted to reveal to his children the Ketz, it's not possible that he was about to reveal them the real Ketz. Because first of all, nobody knows the real Ketz when that day will be. Second of all, as we've said before, it could come in any generation if it comes in Achishena. So what did he want to tell them? He wanted to tell them the last possible date. Why did Hashem allow him to tell his kids the last possible date? Because what good would it do them if they knew that we still have 3,000 more years to go? That's a long time. There was a great rabbi who lived about 100 years ago. His name is the Malbim. That is how he is known. And he started talking a lot more about the kids than any other rabbi in the past 100 years. And when they asked him, why are you doing it? All of a sudden talking about something that the rabbis, of course, felt that you shouldn't point to a date. It was too risky. He said as follows. Imagine there was once a father with a young boy who were walking. They were on a very long trip. And the child would always ask his dad, how far do we have to go yet? How many more miles do we have to go? And his dad says, don't worry about it. And he would never give him a straight answer. He would always push it off. Finally, after many months of traveling, the father turns to his son and he says, we have just a couple more kilometers to go. Now the son turns to his father and asks him, why didn't you tell me before? Why are you telling me all of a sudden now? So before it was not right for me to say, what good would it have done for you if I would have told you we still have 200 miles to go? You would not have benefited from it. On the contrary, you would have despaired. But now that we're close, it is befitting, it is correct, it is appropriate. It's okay for me to point out that we're only a few kilometers away. The same says the Malbim. Before, 400, 600, 800 years ago, imagine the Jewish people were very poor people, miserable. Had you told them you still have 1,000 years to go, it would have made things worse for them. The Jewish people always had the hope. And as we said before, it was fundamental to Judaism to believe that it can come at any day if we merit it. So it was not right, and the time had not come yet to point out. Today it's of course different, as we will soon see, when many things that have been said before, especially in the prophets, are coming true. Before we begin to go into the prophecies, I have to point out several things that are important for us to know in order for us to be able to identify. Because when we see something happening, how do we know if this has anything to do with the Mashiach? I'll give you a quick example. The war in Yugoslavia, does that have anything to do with the coming of the Mashiach? Well, we have a tradition that everything is connected. No matter what happens in the world, everything is leading to one direction. But if you follow the events closely and you read what the rabbis have to say, then you are able to identify what a particular event has with the coming of the Mashiach. And I will show you what Yugoslavia has to do. Even though it's indirect, it's not directly connected, nevertheless there is definitely a connection. There's a connection with World War I, there's a connection with World War II, there's a connection with every event that occurs. We may never understand what the connection is, but the more we learn, the more we will be able to identify it. Before we begin with the prophecies, I also want to mention something else. You may have heard the term, the end of the world. There's no such a thing as the end of the world, even though we said the world is 6,000 years. Sof ha'olam, what does it Sof ha'olam mean in Judaism? It means Sof ha'sebel. It means the end of the pain, the end of the suffering, the end of the galut, the end of the diaspora. There's no such a thing as the end of the world, because what will happen at the end? There will be Tachiyat HaMetim, which is another subject in itself. The dead will rise. There is something called Olam Haba, a new world that will follow after the year 6,000. So when we say Sof HaOlam, we don't believe what some non-Jews would like to believe, that that's the end of it. You know, some non-Jews believe that once you die, that's the end of it. You go back to the earth and there's nothing else. That is another fundamental yesod in Judaism, that is not the end. Just like a fruit, an orange, has seeds. You eat the orange, you think the orange is gone, but the orange has seeds. Just take those seeds and plant them in the ground, you get some new oranges. Man is much more important than an orange, but he's just like a seed. Even when he dies, he goes back to the ground, Hashem can make him come out again, just like he makes the orange come out again. And not just one orange, a whole tree full of oranges. Well, we don't see that today. We see fruit trees bearing more fruit. So that is why it's difficult for some people to understand it. But the Tachiyat HaMetim is another very important yesod in Judaism, which will follow the coming of the Mashiach. The coming of Mashiach therefore involves several stages, which I will begin to discuss right now. One of the things that the rabbis point out that has to occur before Mashiach comes is a seder. There has to be an order. Everything is messed up right now. There has to be a seder with the goyim, with the Jews, and with something that I will explain later that's called kefirah. Kefirah means heresy. If you notice, I put underneath the word goyim tzedek, underneath the word Yehudim brit, and underneath the word kefirah, which means heresy, truth. These are three things that need to happen. Tzedek means justice. There's no justice today. Hitler, almost got away with it. Brit, there is a covenant. The covenant means that God promised us that we will return to Eretz Israel one day, all the Jews. Well, that is already happening. And finally, we have kefirah. There is something which hasn't been around 1,000 years ago, but it is very rampant today, since the 1800s especially, and that is heresy. People do not believe in God. They believe in science. And to counter that, of course, we want and we are expecting the Mashiach to, of course, to bring this about. That is that the truth should come out. The truth about the Jew, the truth about Judaism, the truth about the world. All of this has to be made, there has to be a seder. Things have to be organized. One of the first and most important prophecies that will tell you that we're about to make order, things are about to fall in the right place, is the prophecy of Ani Sherochev al Chamor. Most of you probably have heard that term, that the Mashiach, the arrival of the Mashiach, is heralded as a poor man riding on a donkey. Now, what does it mean, a poor man riding on a donkey? Is he actually going to come in a donkey? Maybe he's going to come in a Rolls Royce. I mean, he doesn't have to come riding on a donkey. What is the meaning of riding on a donkey? So you must remember, anytime you learn Gemara, anytime you read the prophets, that a lot of what is said and written is allegoric. It is not literal. It doesn't mean that is actually how he's going to come. Ani Sherochev al Chamor means point number one is that it happens slowly. A donkey travels slowly. So the stages of the Mashiach is not going to happen overnight in one day. It's not going to happen in 1 month. It's not going to happen in 1 year. It's going to happen over a period of many years. And we'll see soon how many years. That is what it means, Hamor. Number two, Hamor means also Chomriyut. The generation that Mashiach comes will be a very materialistic generation. Never has the standard of living been so high. Just read your history books, and you will see how the majority of people were always poor. You always had some rich people, but the majority were always poor. Chamor, therefore, is the same root of the word Homer. It will be a very materialistic generation. Look back, and I think the real materialism begins right after World War II. That is when just about everything goes up. Everybody today is even playing with their money in the stock exchange. People don't mind wasting money. That is how much money there is today. But there's something else. It says Ani, a poor man. Poor man referring to the Jewish people. They will be poor, not necessarily financially, but the poverty will be spiritually. They will be assimilated. You never had so much assimilation before. The majority of the Jews were always observant. You always had some who were not so observant, who were lax. But today, it's incredible what's going on, especially in this country. You have over 55% intermarriage. In South America, you have about 50%. And even in Israel, you have Jewish girls marry Arabs. And I think there's about 12,000 of them, according to the latest statistics. I don't know if it's 12, but it's several thousands of Jewish girls married to Arabs. The interesting part is that some of the kids are becoming Baalei Teshuvah. So you have Baalei Teshuvah who are Arabs, or at least look like Arabs, in yeshiva today. Because in the end, Hashem always brings them back. He doesn't let the Jew be totally forgotten. But it's very sad anyway to see what is happening all over the world with Jews, the assimilation. All of that is seen in the words Ani Sherochem Chamor. It's a description of the time of when Mashiach will come. It doesn't tell us when, it doesn't tell us what events will occur, but it's a description, it's a general description of the time. Another thing that stands out in the words of the rabbis are that the arrival of Mashiach will come on three main fronts. One is mentioned in the Zohar, and that is of science, as of the year 1840. The Zohar says the year 1840. The year 600, 5,600. The gates of wisdom will open up. Gates of wisdom will open up, and if you look back from that moment on, major inventions are taking place 1 year after another. Electricity, airplanes, telephones, cameras, major advances in medicine. I mean, I can list a whole bunch of them. Major advances in all areas of science are beginning to take place from that moment on. And when is that? That is 400 years before the year 6000. So what do we see? We see some things happening many, many years before the year 6000. But it is on a very low key. It is not too obvious yet. The rabbis tell us that this is what Solomon meant when he said, Mizot hanishkafa kemoshachar, yafa kalevana, baraka chama, ayuma kanitgalo. The arrival of the Mashiach, the whole era, will be like dawn. The rays of the sun, when it's dawn, are very light. I mean, you barely notice it. It's just coming out. But then the sun rises, it becomes brighter, and finally when it's noon, it's at its brightest point. The same thing with the arrival of Mashiach. It won't be clear in the beginning, even though things will be happening. It will first be like the light of the dawn. Then that light will increase, and then it will be as clear as the moon, then it will be as bright as the sun. That is the meaning of that pasuk. So we're beyond that point. We are at the point today that I would like to say it is as clear as the moon. It's very clear, except for those who are sleeping. It is obviously clear, especially once we get into the prophecies, you will see how clear it is. I'd like to say it's as bright as the sun, but unfortunately, the Goyim and not many Jews do not see it, so I can't say it's as bright as the sun. Because once it becomes bright as the sun, can you look at the sun? The sun is blinding. The light is so blinding and so intense that it means obviously that it will be clear to just about everybody. Right now it is illuminating as the light of the moon. So we're having it from one front, the front of science. We're having it from a second front. Then what's the second front that will tell us that things are happening, things are materializing, it's getting closer? Kibbutz galuyot. You will slowly see an ingathering of Jews. And the ingathering of Jews also will happen in stages. You had a tremendous big stage in 1948, of course, when many Jews from North Africa, from Europe after the Holocaust, came running to Israel. And who will be the last ones? The Americans. They just like it over here. They're comfortable here. They'll have to be pushed out. Yes, and I mean it literally. According to some opinions, they will be pushed out, kicked out, either because the economics will be bad, either because of the crime and the violence, either because of anti-Semitism. And of course, the very, very last ones will be brought home by Mashiach himself. That will be one of his jobs, as we will soon see later. That he will bring home some of those Jews that still remain. But nevertheless, the Jews do not come home necessarily all on their own. There are very few people, statistically, percentage-wise, who decide to make Aliyah. They're just comfortable. Just look at what happened in Galut Bavel, after the temple was destroyed and when we were in Babylonia, today is known as Iraq. We spent there 70 years. Some Jews, of course, 70 years is a long time. You already have grandchildren and great-grandchildren by then. They already had businesses established. The time came to rebuild the second temple. They were given permission to go back to Israel. Only 40 or 44,000 Jews arrived in Israel. The rest did not want to come along. So we like it in Babel. They liked it in Iraq. That is unfortunately what happened back then, and that is what is unfortunately happening today. And I always tell people this. Why do I want to go back to Israel? B'ezrat Hashem? Because I was kicked out by the Romans over 1900 years ago. And today I have the opportunity to go back, and nobody can stop me. Why shouldn't I? Of course, the only reason I am here is because I'm telling you to go. It would be very selfish of me. It's a real big question. I'm always bothered by it. I'd like to be there tomorrow. And the only thing that I guess convinces me to stay behind is apparently there are many people out here that need help. And if I would be going, it would be somewhat selfish of me. That of course I like it there and I should be there, but perhaps some people do have to remain here and work hard on convincing everybody else that they should at least get ready very soon. My grandfather, Alav Shalom, before World War II, this is in the mid-20s, ran around all over Europe. And he was a young man, single, convincing not only his family, but many Jews to leave. That the earth is burning, he said. Things are going to get bad here. This is in the 20s, the mid-20s. Very few people listened to him. He was all excited to go. And because he went, he was saved. On the other side, my great-grandfather, he was once walking down the street in Poland, and a non-Jew threw a stone at him. And he told him, Jid, go to Palestine. Jew, go to Palestine. He comes home with a black and blue mark on his eye, and he tells his wife, imagine, he says, a goy has to remind me to go to Palestine. Imagine. He picked up his bags and he left. And of course, he also saved his family. This is a real emunah, real tmimut, sincerity. Not only did they love Eretz Israel, they also got a message that when you get a stone, when somebody throws a stone at you and yells at you, it's a clear signal that perhaps you should pick up your bags and go. He did, and he saved his family. So we have science, we have a kibbutz galiyot happening, and then number 3 is we will see an intensification of wars. There will be many battles. We did not have a world war in the 1700s, in the 1600s. We're only having world wars in this century. We have 2 so far. And there will be additional battles and additional wars. And according to the Chafetz Chaim, this is the way that the Chafetz Chaim expressed himself just before he passed away. He passed away in 1933. He said, the next war will be incredible. So incredible that the World War I, which was fresh in everybody's memories, will be like a kid's play compared to what the next war, World War II, will be like. And you know what he said? World War II will be like kid's play to World War III, or whatever that means. In other words, there will be several battles, some of them major battles, and all of these battles have one term. They have one name. The rabbis call them Milchamot Gog uMagog. So even though some of you perhaps may have heard that there is Milchemet Gog uMagog, there's only one such war. No, there are several. And what they mean is world wars. That is what Milchemet Gog uMagog is. And there will be 3. The only difference between the first 2 and the last one is that the first 2 was amongst the nations of the world, and the third one is only against Israel. And that is the big difference between the last and final Milchemet Gog uMagog and the very first 2. Okay, before we go on, I just want to also point out that the reason why all of these 3 are significant, the science, the kibbutz, and the milchamot, is as follows. The kibbutz, especially, the ingathering, what is that doing? It is preparing and paving the way for the final redemption in a very important way. If there's going to be massive immigration to Israel, you have to have roads, you have to have homes, you have to have an infrastructure. So that's what is being prepared right now. All the roads, all the freeways, all their homes, the agriculture, all of that is being prepared. You can't do that overnight. Millions of Jews are going to come to Israel. Is that when we get started? No. So Hashem prepared all of that before. And this starts at the turn of the century, when you only had about 12,000 Jews, by the way. And what do we see today? Close to 5 million. That in itself is a very significant point, because whoever pays attention to what is happening can only be amazed, not only at the pace, but at the numbers that we're seeing in Israel. There's another point that sometimes I speak about when I talk about this topic. Again, this topic is a very, very extensive topic, and there's all sorts of things that I can mention, but we will be here several hours. But since I got started on this, I might as well say it. There are some individuals in Israel who are apparently not so loving of the land. They don't mind giving it away for the sake of peace with the Arabs and so forth. They are called the Erev Rav. The Erev Rav is the admixtures, people who are joined the Jewish people in the past, but they are not Jewish at heart. And you can tell who they are. I think I may have mentioned to you during the lecture of the Holocaust that we had individuals in Europe that were called kapos. Kapos were those Jews who were willing just to have a little bit of a better breakfast to hand over their Jewish brother to the SS or the Gestapo. They were not Jewish at heart, even though they were circumcised. These people, the rabbis tell us, the Zohar actually says, are the Erev Rav. They were never Jewish to begin with. Several hundred years ago, or perhaps several thousand years ago, depending on at what point, they joined the Jewish nation. They converted. And they were not sincere. The very first group of them was when we exited Egypt. When we left Egypt, a whole bunch of them wanted to jump on the bandwagon and be part of the Jewish people. They were never sincere, and you could see it in their action. They don't mind giving up parts of Eretz Israel. However, even though they're not as nice and they're not conducting themselves according to the Jewish spirit, nevertheless they have done something. They are taking part in rebuilding the land of Israel. Why is that happening? Isn't that as a hoot for them? Isn't that something to their credit? After all, they're doing the mitzvah. But I once explained that it's not necessarily such a big mitzvah that they're doing, because they are the ones to blame for the destruction of the Second Temple. They are the ones that called the Romans. There was a whole political argument amongst many of those Jewish individuals who were in control during the Second Temple era towards the end, who were not very observant. They brought about the destruction by inviting the Romans into the land of Israel. They took an active part, therefore, in the destruction, and it was always my feeling that Hashem is bringing them back in reincarnation. You destroyed it, now you're going to rebuild it. You will do like we say in Hebrew, et avodah shchora, all the dirty work. You will build the streets. You will put up kibbutzim. You will plant the trees, together with the Arabs, of course, for everybody else to enjoy. So what we're seeing today is a lot of people taking part in rebuilding Israel, some of them because they destroyed it with their own hands. What is the purpose of all the wars? There's several reasons why we're seeing many wars today. One has to do with the final nekama, with the final revenge that God is going to take from all the nations that persecuted the Jewish people. That is number one. That is why you see many wars. But there are also several battles and wars that are happening today for one sole reason. Hashem is breaking up some nations and joining others for putting them, eventually assembling them as one unit, as one war machine against Israel, which will be led by Gog. In other words, the final war of Gog, which we call Gog and Magog, is an assembly of nations that Hashem will put together in a very interesting way. For what purpose? Just for that last war against Israel. So a lot of the things that are happening, the pieces are falling into place for that eventual war to happen. By the way, the United Nations, that body of whatever, 147 countries, also has something to do with that. Okay, something strange will occur during this time. Even though we see the kibbutz galuyot, even though we see science, even though we see all of these good things happening, nevertheless there will be a certain amount of ra, a certain amount of evil, of bad, mixed in all of this. The Zohar calls this tum'ah, ruach ha-tum'ah, or sitra hara. There's something out there that does not want to let this happen, that wants to prevent this from taking place, because ultimately the Geulah, the redemption, is the best thing you could ever ask for. So there will be something called hafra'ah. There will be several hafra'ot, several things that will interfere with the final redemption. One type of hafra'ah, one type of disturbance, one type of an interference will be Ishmael. Where do we see that interference? In Israel. They're coming back to Israel, but they just can't seem to take over. They can't, they're in the process of giving it back now. They're going to have interference from Ishmael. That is one type of hafra'ah. The second type of hafra'ah we spoke about was the Erev Ra. There is a tremendous fight between observant Jews and non-observant Jews in Israel. All of this is tum'ah, all of this is sitra hara. It does not want all of this to happen. That is why we have a custom on Rosh Hashanah. Anybody know the custom with the shofar, with blowing of the shofar? When do we begin to blow the shofar? Chodesh Elul, right? But we don't make a big deal from it. We hide it. It is very secret. On Rosh Hashanah itself, there is a custom to hide the shofar itself, to cover it up. The whole custom of blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is therefore is done secretly. It's not with great fanfare. Why? Because we want to keep it away from the Satan. We don't want to let him know what is about to happen. That is one reason of why we cover it up. There's other reasons, other explanations of why we cover it up. The blowing of the shofar, of course, is supposed to confuse him, too. It is supposed to confuse the Satan. But the custom of covering it up is also to do it secretly, not to be very open about it. A lot of the secrets, a lot of the major events leading up to the Mashiach are done secretly. For example, I'll give you a quick example. The story of Yehuda and Tamar. The story of the daughters of Lot. All of you are familiar with these stories. These stories are very unusual stories of girls, daughters, being with their father. Yehuda being with his daughter-in-law. But who comes out of all of this? Mashiach. Because Mashiach has to come out in a secret way, quietly. Otherwise, the Ruach HaTum'ah, the Sitra Hara, or the Ain Hara, as some of you probably may know it, can interfere, can disrupt. That is the interference that we're seeing on many, many fronts. We are having the interference of Ishmael, because according to the Zohar, Ishmael has a certain part of Eretz Israel. It belongs to him too. Why? Because he is also the son of Abraham Avinu. He is also circumcised. So he interferes. But he can only interfere if there is an accusation against the Jews, which unfortunately there is today. There's a terrible accusation against the Jews. They're not following the Torah mitzvot. And here what is about to happen? They're about to get the Geulah, they're about to come home, they're about to have the third temple being rebuilt. All of these good things are about to happen because, of course, of the covenant that we mentioned before. Why do they deserve it? The same thing happened when we left Egypt. The Sitra Hara, the Midat Hadin, got up and said, why are you making all these miracles to the Jewish people? They deserve it. They worshipped idols just as much as the Egyptians did. So what did God answer? God answered, how could you compare the Egyptians to the Jews? The Jews were forced. They did not do it intentionally. They didn't know from right to left. How could you compare a person who does something intentionally to somebody who does it unintentionally? Same thing today. We must speak only good about our Jewish brothers and sisters who are not observing the Torah properly. We must give them the benefit of the doubt. We must judge them positively. That they are Tinokim Shenishbu. they're like little children that were kidnapped, taken away from their parents. They were raised without any Judaism. It's not their fault. Be very careful not to criticize anybody, unless you know for sure him to be a couple, a wicked Jew, an Erev Rav. The majority of Jews today do not know. They're lost. It's not their fault. It is our hope, of course, that this will appease the Almighty, that this will cancel out any accusation. All right, I think we can begin with the actual process of how long will all of this take. I think that's something that all of you want to know. We don't know exactly the time when all of this will occur, but we have an idea of how long this will take. Now, it depends when we speak about how long this will take, what are we talking about? Because some things will occur, have occurred already from the year 1840. What we're interested in is what I said in the very beginning, with the final case that's called Acharit Hayamim. There is several opinions in the Gemara, but the one that is the most accepted one is the one that says Shlosha Dorot. This whole process, where all these last things that we just mentioned have to occur, that all of that has to take place in 3 generations. Okay, we're left with 2 questions now. 3 generations, how long is a generation? 20, 25, or 30 years? Let's go on the 20-year side. 20 years, that means it's 60 years. Well, now that leads us to the second question. Right, now that we know how long it will last, well, from where do we begin counting? You see why it becomes difficult to figure it out? Especially that we're in the middle of all this. We know, from what I've said before, that it all has begun. It all started. We're seeing it in front of our eyes. We're seeing the kibbutz galuyot. We're seeing the wars. We're seeing the problems that we have in Israel. And we know it's been the last 60 years. Well, where do we start counting from? Do we start counting from 1938, 1939, 1948, 1900? Well, it can't be from 1900, right? So depending on from where you start counting, but regardless from the point you start counting, we know that it's all about to finish. The 60 years, what 60 years is talking about, the 60 years for all the intense activity, for all the big stuff that happened, not for the small things, not for the science, for all the inventions, because that is taking a slower pace, and that has begun a lot earlier. Kibbutz galuyot, the gathering of the diaspora, also happens in stages. That has begun even in the late 1700s and into the 1800s, and only a major increase after 1948. And then, all of a sudden, in the 1890s, another major increase from Russia with the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we're seeing all of this happening in stages, and we're finally growing. As I said before, it's just about 5 million Jews. So we know we're getting there. Okay, let's begin with prophecy that are happening and are yet to happen. Prophecy number 1 is a prophecy that is mentioned in, I think, in Zechariah, in the prophet Zechariah. He says as follows: He's talking about the time of the temple is about to be destroyed and everybody's about to go into the diaspora, and he's making a long-term promise that there will come a time that you will see once again elderly people in the streets of Yerushalayim, where you will see ne'arim or ne'arot, yiladim or yiladot, boys and girls playing in the streets of Jerusalem. I think many of you have been to Jerusalem. Powerful one. Now, as soon as you see this one, you know you're living in that generation. And that is the prophecy of Perot Yisrael. As soon as the land of Israel begins to give its fruit. If you were living in Israel in the 1600s, you could barely grow a tomato. It was a very arid place. Desert, camels, donkeys. I mean, people died from hunger. You could grow very little. Therefore, when you see this prophecy come true, that Israel is once again giving its fruit, then you know that's very, very close. The commentaries say that this is the most prominent one. That this is a certain prophecy, because up until the Jews came to Israel, while the land was subjected to all other nations, Arabs, Romans, Greeks, whatever you want, during those days, the land did not give its fruit as much as it's giving today. They were exporting oranges and other fruits to other countries in the world. So that is also something that is already being fulfilled right now. So you know for a fact that this is the generation. Number 3. We have a Masoret, we have a tradition that Jerusalem as a city has to be built before the gathering of the diaspora. Before everybody comes, the land and the country, but especially Jerusalem, Yerushalayim has to be rebuilt, there has to be a new city. It will not be complete until Mashiach comes, because according to another tradition, the city will extend itself and reach the outer limits of Damascus. So, if you go back to Israel this year and the last time you were there was a year ago, you will notice that another hill has been conquered.
Another hill has been built. Every year that I go, every time I go to Jerusalem, to Israel, I see more and more construction, especially in that part of the country, that city. The city is growing and expanding itself. Up until it will extend itself up until the outskirts of the city of Damascus. Well, if you think of it, it's not impossible, because all you got to do is build between Jerusalem and the Golan, and Tzfat. And if it's all one landscape, if it all extends itself, just like LA, from Long Beach up until Lancaster, you can fill it up. I mean, there's some hills and desert in between, right? But it's, and it's pretty much, and it will be close to the same distance that I'm talking about, from Jerusalem to Damascus. No big deal. It will be like one big city. You're talking about Jerusalem and Tel Aviv eventually being one city, because it's all filling up in between. Just go and you can see Kiryat Sefer, Modi'in, Bet Shemesh. All of that is in between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And in Tel Aviv itself is growing. You have Rishon LeZion, you have Bat Yam and Holon, which is also extending itself in all directions. So you're having all these cities grow more and more up, hopefully up until they reach the point that they will get even to the outskirts of Damascus. So this is a Masorah, a tradition that we had. The city of Jerusalem is rebuilt. And this could not have been seen or said 100 years ago. Just imagine if you were sitting in a yeshiva 100 years ago, and you were reading the book of Yechezkel. And you know what the book of Yechezkel is? It says a very important prophecy. It talks about Gog Magog coming on an Israel when Israel is already well established, with many, many Jews living in the land, peaceful, with a good economy. If you were reading this prophecy 100 years ago, what would you have said? Oh, we still got a long ways to go. Good economy, established, developed, with many, many Jews already settled in the land 100 years ago. Today, this is true. It makes sense that that prophecy will come true soon. But God will invade and will attack that land that is established, that is settled, and developed. That's another subject. Why God wants to attack, I'll just tell you briefly. Hashem will put it into his head, that's all. He will put it into his head because he wants to take revenge. So he will assemble all the nations. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later. Another prophecy that has not taken place yet, but is to be expected very soon, there will be a big fight between those who helped build the second temple and those who destroyed it. Who helped build the second temple? The Persians. They gave permission. They said they gave some assistance. And who destroyed it? The Romans. Do we have a Roman Empire today? Yes, we still do. It kind of fell apart. It just has different names today. Today it's broken up into different countries. Just like the Latin language is broken up into 5. You have Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, Romanian, and Romansh. Right? You have several breakups of the language. You also have several breakups of the people who were originally known as the Romans. They're all over the place. The big question is what's the United States' role in all of this? Are they part? And as you will see soon, they are. They will be part of this whole assembly of nations that will come against Israel. But what you have is first, what is still expected to happen that has not happened yet, is a fight, a big battle, and a tremendous source of trouble between Iran and the rest of the Roman Empire, which is mainly Europe. This could not have been true had the Shah still been in power. He was a nice guy, I think, that's what they tell me. Right? He was an ally of the United States. El Al had direct flights to Tehran on a daily basis, I think. Who would think of it? But as soon as the Shah left, and as soon as the extremists took over, that should have been an alarm. That should have set the alarm for anybody who was aware and knew that this is yet to happen. And it could only happen because there is extremism there now. And just remember, if anything is significant about all these prophecies, this one is, because I assure you that they will be a source of trouble, a tremendous source of trouble to the world. The next one, the Zohar says something very incredible, that right after this, there will be a nation at the far ends of the earth that sits on a very large continent that will wage war for 3 months on Iraq. Who is this nation that sits on a very large continent at the very end of the world? I think it's the United States. I don't think China wants to go to Iraq. So we already had round 1, right? When you had the Gulf War, I'm expecting the round 2, maybe even a round 3. And I'll tell you why 3 rounds in a moment. But this is another war that is yet unfinished. Iraq will also be destroyed. Why should Iraq be destroyed? So the Zohar says because all the troublemakers have to get their punishment. Iraq destroyed, Babylonians destroyed the first temple. Rome destroyed the second temple. They're going to get it. Hashem therefore will bring back the original dictators in a reincarnated form. Nebuchadnezzar, you're gonna meet Nebuchadnezzar soon. And I think he's already here because Saddam Hussein says he is Nebuchadnezzar. And if that's true, then you know what's going to happen to him. I don't know who Gaddafi is, but I'm sure he might be one of those too. But anyway, all of these people, a lot of the dictators, may be Gilgulim, reincarnations of previous leaders that Hashem brings back to make stupid wars, which what the invasion of Kuwait was. What for? For Hashem to avenge what they did to the Jewish people. So this is another battle, a battle between the United States perhaps and Iraq. Then you have Yishmael, you have the Arabs causing trouble. Then there will be three major battles that they will bring about. Now this one I'm not sure. This could have been the Crusades. We had two Crusades, so it could be two of them are behind us. But we do know that one of them will be very, very close to Yerushalayim. That is yet to happen. This one I think is a very interesting one that very few people are aware of. In Parashat Balak, there are several prophecies about Mashiach, but it's very cryptic. It's very hard to understand what Bilam is speaking about when he's saying prophecy about the end of days. But if you read Yonatan ben Uziel, if you understand Aramaic, you will find what he's talking about. He says as follows, V'tzim miyad kitim. If you ask somebody, what does that mean? Even somebody who speaks very good Hebrew, says Tzim. That's the name of a company, of a boat company in Israel, right? Tzim, right? Is that what they call it? Tzim miyad kitim. If you read Yonatan ben Uziel, he says as follows, there will be legions made of many soldiers that will leave Italy and Turkey on their way to wage war against Assyria. What does Italy and Turkey have in common? Anybody know today? What is it? NATO. A very important base in Turkey, and we just saw a very important base in Italy. He says Constantinople, which is Istanbul, and he says from a place called Lambarnaya, which is in Italy. Boats full of legions of soldiers will leave these two places on their way to wage war against Assyria. Syria meaning Iraq and all that area. Again, what's the connection here? NATO. That is what I said in the very beginning. The connection of Yugoslavia perhaps is not that significant except for the fact that you have a whole bunch of nations grouping together for something in the future to be used eventually against Israel. So what Hashem is doing at this time is something incredible. He is breaking up the nations that don't belong with each other. Who doesn't belong with each other? Kazakhstan doesn't belong with Russia. They have nothing in common, right? So that's where you have Russia falling apart. You have Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, all of these breaking up because they're different people, right? You have Czechia and Slovakia separated because they're very different people, even though they speak very similar language. You have all those who don't belong together drifting. And then you have those that belong together coming together. So on the inside Europe, they're breaking apart, but from the outside, they're all joining together as one nation, as one people, because it's all the Roman Empire. Hashem is bringing them back together, assembling them for one reason. He's going to eventually bring them against Israel. That is why you have the EC forming. Common market, common currency. All of this is the unity. For what reasons? To bring them together to go against Israel. And that is, of course, still yet to happen. Okay, the next one is what the rabbis tell us, and that is Ki Geula Achrona Ken Tiye Geula Atida. If you want to have a picture of what the last moments of the Geula will look like, just look back at the first Geula, the first redemption of Egypt. What did we have in Egypt? We had Makot. We had plagues, locusts, blood, lice, hail, all of these things. Well, guess what? It's going to happen again. You're going to have a lot of freaky weather all over the world, all sorts of problems all over the world, whether it will be locusts, I don't know, but all sorts of disasters, natural disasters, including earthquakes. Exactly, and that is happening lately with much more intensity. Just look at the United States as a record. Between 1985 and now, how many natural disasters were there in this country? Incredible how many. How many hurricanes? How many tornadoes? How many earthquakes just in Los Angeles or in the Southern California area? It's going to intensify. The closer we get, we're going to have an intensification of this process. Because this will be like the Makot in Mitzrayim. And last but not least, we have Otot Mashamayim. This is the most important one of all of them. What did Moshe do to prove that he is the Goel? Anybody remember the story? What did Moshe prove to the Jews?
How did he convince the Jews that he is the Goel, he's the Mashiach back then? He did several otot muftim, right? His stick became a snake, right? He did several things to prove to them. Right before or right about when Mashiach comes, there will also be otot muftim. There will be incredible miracles, not necessarily by the Mashiach, who will do some of his own, but in the heavens. The Zohar says that there will be astronomical phenomena, weird, strange things that the world will be amazed and will be concerned. What's happening? They never saw something like that. Imagine one description in the Zohar: various comets, not one comet, which everybody looks, calmly with his binoculars, but imagine a whole bunch of comets that you could see with the naked eye dancing around each other. And this will go on for 7 days. Imagine a pillar of light coming down from heaven. For 30 days, you will be able to see that pillar of light. I think many people will have many questions, and many will be very scared. But the Zohar says, so long as you don't see these things, he is not here yet. So we can see all of these things happen, but we still do not know if he's around the corner or if there's still many years to go until we see those astronomical phenomena. That will be otot bashamayim. Some people ask me whether an eclipse is a significant event. The only thing I can tell you is that the rabbis tell us likui hama, which means when something happens to the sun, something which is a form of discoloration, it is not a good sign for the goyim. I'm not sure if an eclipse is what the rabbis meant, the likui hama, even though that's the term they use in Israel today. For an eclipse, it's called likui hama. Likui hama, I think, might be more in the form of major flares, sun flares, or sunspots out of the ordinary. Because there is a tradition that the moon will turn to blood or will become red. And if that's the case, then it could be that the likui hama really means that there's some form of discoloration, and not just a mere eclipse which occurs almost on a regular basis. But it could be. After all, we had a terrible tragedy in Turkey right after the eclipse. So maybe there is something to it, but I'm not sure. Then we have what the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, the last 7 years, which could have begun 2 years ago, which may be beginning with this coming year, 57-60. The last 7 years before Mashiach comes are crucial because there will be famine. We're not used to famine right now. But if you've been following the news very closely, you would have noticed that there has been some terrible drought, I think in the East Coast, in the Midwest, and in other countries in the world. What? In Israel. Exactly. So if you will see several years, one after another, of major drought, which will lead to famine, then you know that we're in the last 7 years of which is called the Shemitah, which is the last 7 years of right before the coming of the Mashiach. The last points that I want to make deal with the leaders, the main stars, the main players that we need to be familiar with, that will basically usher in the coming of the Mashiach. We have Mashiach ben Yosef, Elyahu Navi, Mashiach ben David. Again, this is an area where very few people understand because we have very little information. We have two Mashiachim. One is called Mashiach ben Yosef, and one is called Mashiach ben David. Anybody who was here when I spoke about the 10 tribes, I mentioned the fact that the 10 tribes will come back. And then we will have an additional 20, 30 million Jews just from them, if not more. Mashiach ben Yosef is an individual who comes from them. His job is to fight several of the battles, several of the wars that the Jews will have, to clean up Eretz Israel from all the tumah that there is there, and to teach us Torah. That will be part of what his job will be. Elyahu Navi's job is to bring Am Yisrael back with Shuvah. But some rabbis say that it's not only he himself, Elyahu Navi, that will bring back Am Yisrael with Shuvah. It is his time, during his era. If it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, there will be an awakening that many of our brothers and sisters will feel a thirst to come back to do teshuvah. They will see how life is so empty, and they will want to come back. This will be the time of Elyahu Navi. Of course, he will eventually bring back everybody else, but once you see an era where people are finally all of a sudden making a U-turn and coming back, you know that you're also on the verge of Mashiach. Then you have Mashiach ben David, which is what we're all looking forward to. And when we say Ani Mamin Be'emunah Shlema Be'biat HaMashiach, we're talking about Mashiach ben David mainly. Because he's the one that rebuilds the Bet HaMikdash. He's the one that destroys Amalek. He's the one that wins the war of Gog and Magog. Even though that particular battle will eventually be handled by God, as the prophet says, that the enemy will be destroyed, nevertheless, Mashiach ben David still leads in that battle and destroys Amalek. There is another very important point that I left towards the end, and that is that the rabbis tell us that there are three things that happen b'Hesech HaDat. Three things that happened when you're not thinking about them. One of them is a metziyah. You're going in the street and you find $10. And you say to yourself, oh, I wish it was 100. But basically, it happens without you paying attention. Oh, right? Metziyah, you didn't look for it. You didn't go outside to look for money. Like some people, they stick their hands in the phones to see if there's change. A metziyah, a real metziyah, you don't expect it. You just find it. The same thing the rabbis tell us with the akitzat akrab, the bite of a scorpion. You're walking in the Santa Monica Mountains, all of a sudden, I don't know if they have scorpions there, but all of a sudden you're bitten. You didn't expect it. These things happen unexpectedly. The rabbis tell us there's one more thing that happens unexpectedly. Mashiach. The coming of the Mashiach. So I have a very big question. We've just heard a lot of prophecies, a lot of simanim, signs, that Mashiach is around the corner and he's about to come. How could that be b'Hesech HaDat? How could that be unexpected? We will know, won't we, that he's about to come? We see that he's coming. Why is it still called b'Hesech HaDat? And the explanation is very simple, because most people are not paying attention to all of this. They're sleeping. They're thinking about their vacations. They're thinking about their furniture. They're thinking about buying their next car. They're not thinking about Mashiach. There are very few people who are talking about Mashiach. So for them, it's going to be b'Hesech HaDat before all of a sudden they're working, they're on their phone, and all of a sudden they'll hear, oh, Mashiach has arrived. And it's probably going to be on CNN as well. But you won't have to look at CNN. According to our tradition, we will hear the blowing of the shofar of Elyahu Navi. In any event, what I just wanted to bring out is that the reason why it's unexpected is because people are mesihim et da'atam. They don't pay attention to all of the great signals, to all of the signs that we're seeing. And last but not least, I don't want to take away your sleep tonight, but it's going to be a very, very frightening time, the last couple of years. Just look at the 39 Scud missiles. If you were in Bnei Brak, which didn't get hit, but Bnei Brak happens to be very close to Ramat Gan, that was hit with several missiles. I mean, it was very, very frightening. This is nothing compared to the time of when Mashiach is about to show up. All the major wars, all the problems. Imagine if there's nuclear blackmail by a country. That would be very frightening. Imagine if you told that there's somebody with a nuclear suitcase in Manhattan. I mean, anything like that. Biological warfare, whatever it might be. There will be a lot of fear. And all of that has an important reason. To bring people back to Tshuva. Hashem wants to awaken people. Why does Hashem care so much to awaken the people? Let him just show up and everybody will wake up. No, because there will be a process of birur. Birur means a filtering process. Hashem will filter out those who are sincere and righteous from those who are just plain fakers. That process is called birur, and the prophet says that only 1/3 of the world population will remain. 2/3 of the world is going to disappear. Maybe not at once, maybe in several wars, maybe some after Mashiach. I don't know how it's going to happen, and I don't know in what way it's going to happen. But it's going to be very frightening. That is why the rabbis compared those frightening moments, the last months or years, but especially the last 9 months, as Heblei Leidah, like a woman having birth pangs, labor pains. She goes through a terrible time, especially in the very first months, especially towards the very end. It becomes very, very painful. But after all the pain, of course, comes out a beautiful baby. But not everybody will know it. People complain, where was God when they were in the Holocaust? They saw their family members being killed right and left. They couldn't see that all of this is leading up to the Mashiach. But the Holocaust, as great of a tragedy as it is, we all know by now that it's definitely related and connected to the final coming of the Mashiach. It's part of those birth pangs, of that labor pain. It was very, very painful. We hope that the worst is behind us, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be that there's still going to be something else, because there are still too many Jews out there that are too comfortable and not thinking about what it means to be a Jew. And to them, that fear will awaken them. The prophet says that in the end, those who are living in the time of the Mashiach will be lucky. Ki ayin be'ayin yir'u, because they will finally see with their own eyes when Hashem comes back and restores the glory of the Jewish people. At that day, The prophet says, "Vaya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, vayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad." And that day, God will be one, and everybody will know it. Let us hope that B'ezrat Hashem, all of us will see that day happening very soon. Amen. Any questions? If you have any questions, ask the Mashiach.